You are sitting in your second grade classroom during roll call. Your teacher calls students by their last names but stops when she gets to yours, calls you by your first name instead. Today you will realize what it's like to be this girl in America, and you'll want to go home, where your skin wasn't on display for little boys and girls who didn't know any better. Let them touch your hair. They don't even have to ask. Let them call it ghetto now, and in 2 years call it trendy. Laugh when they ask how you managed to get it like that, and then burn it. Burn it straight. Do so often you'll forget it. Lose the pattern history etch-a-sketched into your coils. They can't understand that mess. And how can they love you if they do not understand you? When you open your history books and see no one who looks like you, do not be surprised. Winners are the ones that get to write history, so slave masters and colonizers fill pages and pages while the enslaved and indigenous get an aside. An excerpt, land acknowledgement, no land back. One side of a $20 bill that could have bought her. On the other side, a white man, Jackson, that could have bought her. How do you whitewash a mass genocide? Easy. You teach a nation that only winners get to write history, and by winners, they mean white. Only the white get to write history. You know this. They know this, but you do not correct them. You let them butcher your name instead, because how can they love you if they do not understand you? When they call you angry, let them. When they call you too loud, let them. When they say that you are too dark, too much, not enough, let them. Dance to the beat of their drum so often you'll forget your own. This is assimilation. How can they love you if they do not understand? You'll lose your accent. No one will ever have to ask you where you are from. This is what you wanted, right? With every mispronunciation and every apology, you fall further and further away from the girl who wanted to go home, who had one. See, they can only love you if they can understand you into submission. You are sitting in yet another classroom. This time, it's my women's gender and sexuality class, and we are having a discussion. The professor draws 2 boxes on the board, and in conjunction with the rest of the class, writes down a list of stereotypes and adjectives used to describe men in one box and women in the other. As the class contributes and I observe, something feels off. My eyes find those of a girl that looks like me seated across the classroom, and she has the same expression written on her face as I do. Words like polite, docile, accommodating find their way to the board, and it clicks. The box designated for women is not about us. We are no strangers to this feeling. The act of being othered, while glaringly obvious to us, goes otherwise ignored. Often unintentionally, structures and those who uphold them view whiteness as the default, and in turn create a kind of dissonance for those who find themselves outside of it. In 1989, Kimberly Crenshaw coined the term intersectionality, giving millions of people the ability to describe their experiences in ways they weren't able to before. In the situation that prompted Crenshaw's discussion, a woman was attempting to present a case in court, asserting that she was experiencing both racism and sexism in the workplace, despite the fact that there were both Black people, Black men, and women, white women, present. The law seemed to ignore the fact that as a Black woman, she was subject to discrimination on the basis of race, gender, and more often, an amalgamation of the two. There was something that sat layered on top of her experience. See, to be Black and a woman is not additive nor multiplicative. It is intertwined. As this word left the courtroom and entered popular culture, its definition has been slightly misconstrued. See, intersectionality doesn't simply refer to what it's like to occupy multiple identities. It's the ways in which intersecting identities are impacted on by related systems of discrimination and oppression. As a Black person, there are often stereotypes that are imposed on me both consciously and unconsciously by individuals and society as a whole. I'm sure we've all heard the distasteful trope that Black people are aggressive. I grew up hearing this explicitly, but now I experience it more implicitly, like when I'm improperly addressed in meetings, or when I'm labeled as aggressive for standing up for myself or others. I can't help but wonder if it has to do with my race and not my actions. And of course, not everything is about race, but when I'm followed around in a store and inquire about it, a similar response is given, that I looked suspicious, that they weren't actually following me through every single aisle of my neighborhood grocery store. And honestly, I'm a little hostile for bringing it up in the first place. Unless you've experienced the kind of invalidation that arises when you attempt to call out systems of oppression that are actively oppressing you, it's hard to describe it. You're forced to examine yourself and the world around you. The same structures that question your silence are the same ones silencing you. As a Black woman, I find it regular practice to unlearn the simultaneous over-sexualization and hyper-masculinization that society placed and continues to place on me. As a young girl, I learned quickly the dangers of growing up too fast. I was taught to pay attention to my clothes and my action in ways that my peers were not. This was juxtaposed with the fact that at the same time, I was being made fun of for my short, curly hair, being told time and time again that it made me look like a boy. Again, I was being told I was too much and not enough all at the same time. Because of this, I made sure that my hair was in braids for all special occasions, the first days of school, graduations, birthdays. And if I had to have my hair out, I made sure to overcompensate with nail polish, makeup, jewelry, anything to add feminine characteristics to my appearance. 2 years ago, a friend of mine asked me when I felt the most my gender. And while I didn't have an answer at the moment, the question plagued me for months. And it wasn't until I was seated crisscross applesauce in front of the mirror, doing my hair for a wash and go, that I found it. My answer. It was the Black joy looking back at me in the mirror. As I meticulously but deliberately ran my fingers through my hair, I watched my curls bounce back. It was a particularly liberating experience, having grown up being told that looser curls meant good hair, and so my tight coils were otherwise undesirable. The complexity of my connection to my race and my gender is further compounded by my Kenyan ethnicity, my relationship with my hair even. I didn't realize there was anything wrong with my hair until I started middle school. I had grown up seeing pictures of my mom with her short hair and her schoolgirl dress next to her friends who looked similar and wondered why now, and here, it was no longer appropriate. By the time I reached the 7th grade, I'd given up, and my mom convinced me to perm my hair straight. I would sit in a chair, and she would apply petroleum jelly to the edges of my head and the aromatic chemical mixture to my hair. And I was to sit with it until it began to burn, and not a second before. While this made my hair easier to manage for a while, my natural hair would eventually grow back, and I would have to endure yet another perm. It was a never-ending cycle that I feel incredibly lucky to have been freed from. By exploring different styles and learning more about how to take care of my natural hair, I was able to shed some of the internal biases that I held against coarser hair types, commonly referred to as texturism. It was through this process that I was able to find beauty, and more importantly, femininity in my hair. Grappling with societal norms dictating how I manage my hair, to navigating the nuanced dynamics of race in the United States, my personal narrative has been shaped by a journey of self-reflection. Race in Kenya doesn't function the way that it does in the Western world, and so everything I knew and didn't know about my Blackness was shaken when I came to the US. I had to learn what it was like to be a Black girl in America before I knew what it meant to be Black and a girl and in America. Around the same time, I was actively trying to shed my Kenyan accent and adopt an American one. This would make communicating easier. There would be no more, huh? What? And a general lack of effort to understand me. With my accent gone, there is little to identify me as having not been born in the United States. This is what I wanted. I would sit in front of American cartoons, practicing sounding out the words until they felt right. I was working so hard to fit in, I never stopped to question if I was doing it for me or to make myself more palatable to others. Even now, when I speak Swahili, I can hear my American accent battling my mother tongue, and while my friends and my family make fun of me for this, I'm able to hold myself with a little bit more grace, embracing my American upbringing and trying to define my own experience as a Kenyan American. Defining yourself is a lot more difficult than it sounds, especially for marginalized communities who experience this kind of pressure from those within and outside of their community. There's also tension across identities, and you guessed it, more complexities. This is something that I feel is exemplified effectively in the LGBTQ+ community. Many Black non-binary people I know who were socialized as girls find it difficult to hold space for the Black girl who was integral in shaping who they are today. It is incredibly difficult to unweave the societal expectations and pressures and figure out how the person they are today fits within it all. As you can imagine, the hypermasculinization that I encountered did not fade away in childhood. I've always been a tomboy, and just as I was beginning to adopt attitudes and hobbies that reflected that, people were quick to attribute these aspects of my personality to my identity and arrive at the conclusion that I was obviously queer. Queerness, unlike other social identities, is not always outwardly noticeable, and so the process of being othered is complicated. This is why the closet, while a product of society's homophobic and transphobic history, has become a place of solace for those in the queer community. I eventually came to college and found a community that encouraged me to think critically about my sexuality, explore what queerness could look like for me, and eventually carve a space out for myself. This isn't to say that the stereotypes I encountered growing up were right. In fact, they isolated and deterred me from discovering this part of myself then. I was so focused on being a reaction to other people's assumptions, I never stopped to look closer. While society seems to be concerned with boxes and labels they can place people in, the real people who live these very real lives will tell you they are a figment of systemic imagination. Ralph Ellison in The Invisible Man notes, "Simply because people refuse to see me, they see only themselves, my surroundings, figments of their imagination, indeed anything and everything except me." While this speaks directly to my experience as a racialized person, it resonates with me as an overarching sentiment with the way I navigate the world, how society perceives my identities, and by extension, perceives me. This, along with the myriad of examples I've talked about today, highlight the importance of recognizing how ignorance about intersecting identities can further perpetuate injustice and overlook the lived experience of marginalized communities. So what happens when you are the complexity? How do you hold yourself with grace? 1, foster a community that is interested in an authentic version of you. We all come from different walks of life, and valuing authenticity means celebrating the diverse experiences that everyone brings to the table. By doing so, we equip ourselves with the empathy and knowledge needed to advocate for those less privileged. It's not just about being true to ourselves. It's about creating a space where everyone's truth is welcome, celebrated, and amplified. 2, listen to yourself. Identity is not a monolith. You do not have to fit inside of a box. And the more time you spend learning about yourself, the easier it'll be to see when your thoughts are purely yours and not those that society is pressing on you. Keep in mind that identity-based stereotypes cannot be definitively proven or disproven. They're imposed on entire groups of people and often stem from a place of prejudice and bigotry. But you are not a stereotype or a group of people. You are an individual. You can learn to be yourself instead of a response to other people's assumptions. 3, lastly, and most importantly, we need to decenter the default. In conversations and in practice, it is imperative to understand that identities contain a spectrum of experiences and histories and perspectives. By decentering the default, we allow ourselves to understand and hopefully celebrate the diverse and the richness of human experience. Thank you.